I got a little road rash from this episode.
I got a little car sick.
Oh, geez. I don't want to put your personal problems.
Rock and roll.
That's right. Wow. Hello, and welcome to another episode of When Records Ruled, the podcast where we share our love of rock music and pop culture from the 70s and 80s and take a few B-side tracks down memory lane along the way. So get out those liner notes and peel back the aluminum tab on your Hunt's Snack Pack Pudding because it's time to hit the play button. I'm your host, David Norris, and joining me on this flashback musical road trip are my good friends Brian Strom and Lance Schwartz. Did either of you need a spoon for your pudding?
As long as it's
plastic one,
not a wooden spoon. That's all I have to say.
No, I want a plastic one, like the one that went in my lunchbox.
Exactly. Yep.
Nice.
You go. Yep. And don't lick that lid either. It's razor sharp. All right, before we get started, we want to take a minute to thank everyone who's been listening and giving feedback on our episodes. It really does mean the world to us, and we hope that you'll continue to listen and share our podcast with all your friends and family to get the word out about When Records Ruled. So keep leaving comments on our social media channels and let us know how we're doing. All right, for today's episode, we will be discussing the self-titled debut album by The Cars. We'll hear what was happening. I don't think they have that sound on the album.
What's the Roadrunner episode?
That's right. We'll hear what was happening around the time of the album's release, wrap it up with a personal rating of the album, and then we'll end the show with our Remember When segment. So to get us started, Lance has some details about the album.
Sure do. As Dave mentioned, The Cars, by The Cars, was their first album released on June 6, 1978 on Elektra Records. There were several singles on the album, including Just What I Needed, My Best Friend's Girl, and Good Times Roll. The album itself peaked at number 18 on the U.S. Billboard 200 and has been certified 6 times platinum by the Recording Industry Association of America. It spent 139 weeks on the charts, a long time.
Wow,
that's
pretty good.
Yep. The album was also ranked number 4 on the Billboard 200 year chart for 1979. Rolling Stones ranked The Cars at number 282 on its 2003 list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. It was 284 in 2012 when they updated, but it dropped to 353 on the 2020 update.
Oh, naturally. Yeah,
Of course,
I could totally see that.
Because there's so many great albums.
And they probably didn't add any new music. It was probably the same group that they were working with.
Yeah.
They're just shifting them all around.
Shuffle around. You know, I don't like them as much anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just going to drop them down.
Yeah.
Well, that's how they got me to buy the newsstand copy of Rolling Stone in 2020. Just kidding. Just kidding.
All right, to give us an even better frame of reference, Brian is going to enlighten us with some information and fun facts on what was happening around the time the album was released.
Top bands for the week of June 6, 1978 were the Bee Gees. Haven't we heard them about every episode?
Yep,
From the
pretty
late
much.
70s.
Yeah. We got to stop doing late 70s albums now.
The Village People, Debbie Boone, the Commodores, Eric Clapton, John Travolta, and Olivia Newton-John.
A couple in there that I might listen to,
Yeah.
but beyond that,
Yeah.
So basically, that
sure.
was the Grease soundtrack when you talk about
Yeah,
grunge.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. So the top songs, number 3, Too Much, Too Little, Too Late by Johnny Mathis and Denise Williams.
Denise Williams of Let's Hear It for the Boy.
I believe so.
Yeah,
I'm
interesting.
going to guess that. Shadow Dancing, Andy Gibb.
Yep.
And like Dave mentioned, You're the One I Want by John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John.
Stellar.
Yep. My wife could listen to that album every day.
Yep. TV shows, Mork and Mindy.
Yes. Now new.
Different Strokes, Battlestar Galactica,
Yes. That was one of my favorite shows in the 70s.
Taxi, and WKRP in Cincinnati.
Ooh.
Yes.
Nice little tie-in.
Yeah.
Kind
That
of.
is.
Yeah. Top movies, Revenge of the Pink Panther,
Yes.
Halloween, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and Grease.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Top toys: Light Bright, Operation, Merlin,
Yeah.
the Electronic
I
Wizard.
had one of those.
Yep, and Matchbox Cars.
I had a lot of those.
I had a ton
Yes.
of those.
Yep.
I think we had Operation as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's constantly.
Did you guys anyone had the Merlin?
I had the Merlin.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was kind of weird.
I did
Yeah.
not.
That you could actually play on that for
You
quite
could-
a while.
You
There's a
could
number of games.
program songs and stuff.
Yeah,
Like
I
they
didn't have
give
the
you-
patience for that.
Yeah, just by numbers.
Yeah.
Each number had a different
Tic-tac-toe,
tic-tac-toe.
like a memory game.
Yeah.
I don't remember what else is on there. It had a very unique shape to the thing.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool too.
Kind of like a phone,
Yeah.
like a cordless phone of the 80s.
Yeah, true.
I'm waiting for Chinese checkers to show up on our
Okay,
list.
well, we'll see.
Oh, okay.
We'll see.
Yeah. Good luck with that. I think you'll be waiting a while.
Played a lot of that as a kid.
That might have been the 60s.
Nope, didn't play games in the 60s.
All right.
You didn't play any games in the 60s? What kind of life did you lead back then?
I was only 4 years old.
Oh, okay,
In
so-
the 60s.
Yeah?
I probably did, but
And?
I don't remember it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you're probably not alone in that.
I don't remember the Beatles either growing up. Nope,
Oh, yeah.
don't remember it.
Yeah.
And then when I was old enough to remember it, I didn't like them.
Mm.
Now I like them.
They were your parents' band, right?
No, definitely
older
not.
people?
No. It should have been, but my parents weren't that hip. We'll talk about that in the next episode.
There you go.
Yes, we will. All right, guys. I think we need to take a road trip, and I have just what we need.
Ooh.
The debut album from the Cars, so let the good times roll. Well, I hope we don't waste all your time, but before we get into talking about the band and some individual tracks,
Wow,
you like
Dave,
that?
you are on fire.
Wow.
You like that, Lance?
I don't know. I'm laughing, but I don't know if I like it. Come on, just let the good times roll here.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Hey,
Okay.
don't you stop, Dave.
No. Oh, see, it's catching. Before we get into talking about the band and some individual tracks, I have a couple of questions for you guys. How would you describe the sound of this album to someone who's never heard it?
There's kind of a combination of kind of earlier rock and then the future with synthesizers. And they kind of combine the two.
That's a very good assessment.
It's not catchy. You know, I wouldn't put it on a t-shirt, but
Your phrase?
my phrase.
Yeah. Your summary?
Yeah.
I was thinking you might ask this question, and what I wrote down, I'm not sure about, but I'm going to say it. It's kind of a relaxed rock vibe for
Mhm.
me.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not hard driving like metal,
Yeah.
but it's got the guitar that I appreciate.
I would
Like,
I was thinking, I was going to say middle of the road, but middle of the road sounds like, yeah, it's just kind of not really there, but it's kind of in the middle of everything.
it's kind of simple, but really interesting to me because when it came out, and I'm old enough to remember, you guys, I'm a little older than
I
you
know.
guys.
Oh, what?
Every
What?
episode.
Yes.
We got to start some drinking game with that or something.
Yeah. You'd hear it and say, especially when you mention the songs that were popular
Right.
at the time. This is not like anything that was going on. You know what? There were other rock albums out. I'm thinking maybe like Skynyrd's last album was coming out about that time. Boston was still big, but it was new because of the synths
Mm-hmm.
and how they kind of layered that all together. And some of the solos where you'd expect a guitar solo, it's a synthesizer solo. There's guitar solos on the album too, but
Right.
I don't think there was a whole lot before that was doing synthesizer sort of stuff.
Yeah.
in
I
this
can't-
way.
I can't think of any.
Gary Newman, maybe. Remember that song Cars?
Yeah. Wasn't that a little later?
Was that later
I
too?
think that
Yeah, I
was
think it
later.
was. That was more closer to just
So-
80, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it was he was influenced by
Right.
this stuff.
Maybe,
So
yeah.
it was. I'll stick with that though, kind of the relaxed rock vibe, because you can sit back and not get a headache listening to it, but still really
Yeah,
enjoy the
definitely.
sound. Yeah,
Yep.
So I was trying to think about how I would answer this too, as I was asking the question and writing down the question. It's really just bare bones rock in my mind. I'll read you what Robert Palmer, a music critic for the New York Times and Rolling Stone, described the Cars' musical style, and I think this encapsulates it pretty well, so that's why I noted it.
Not the Robert Palmer, like Dr. Doctor.
I don't
Simply
think
Irresistible?
So. I don't think so,
Okay.
but I mean, I could be wrong.
Okay.
It's a side gig he had with
Yeah.
Rolling Stone.
Yeah, something like that. So he said, they have taken some important but disparate contemporary trends, punk minimalism, the labyrinth synthesizer and guitar textures of art rock, the 1950s rockabilly revival, and the melodious terseness of power pop, and mixed them into a personal and appealing blend.
Brian hit it on the head because he talked about the old
Yeah.
with the new.
Well, thanks for letting me know, because I need to pull out a dictionary to look up some of those words, Dave.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We'll put the description definitions in our
Yeah, that's
liner
right.
notes here for the episode. Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought that encapsulated
Well, yeah.
it pretty well.
they were talking, I can't remember where I saw or read this, but they're talking about how they like to experiment and use new technology.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, there would be, one of the guitar players said I'd have like 12 pedals
Yeah.
on the stage with me. And
And he said something too, like if, the stuff may be obsolete in 2 months, but we're still going to use it.
Yep.
Get something new, something different.
You guys have any memories or impressions from this album or hearing the Cars for the first time?
I do not. I think I was familiar with them.
But not just this album. I mean, hearing the Cars.
Right.
This
Yeah.
album or not, yeah.
Right. I remember my cousin Eric had the 45 for Shake It Up. So that was kind of my first big experience with them, listening to that. I remember buying the greatest hits that probably came out in 85. And I just remember seeing that in the store and picking it up and looking at it. And I was like, whoa, I know like every song on here. So I bought that. So my first Cars purchase was their greatest hits. But that's kind of my extent.
How many of these songs do you think were on their greatest hits?
Oh, I bet you 4 or 5
yeah, for sure.
of, 10 or 11. I know they've commented that, the first album was like, oh, our greatest hits album.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely remember rock radio, KQRS, Twin Cities, playing, at least 6 of these in rotation. Playing at least 6 of these in rotation when it first came out.
Yeah.
And I can vividly remember being down the street at a friend's house. I think he either got the cassette or the album, and we listened to this quite often, almost as much as Van Halen when that first came out too. Because it was so different and kind of a breath of fresh air on rock radio.
Yeah.
And rock radio was really slow to adopt new stuff back in the 70s, even the 80s. Like I say, Allman Brothers, Led Zeppelin, Van Halen.
Yeah.
It was, but when this came out, they did pick it up pretty quickly. And it's been, again, like some of the other albums that we've talked about, you can put on classic rock radio and probably hear 3 or 4 of these on any given day.
Yep.
Before I came over here for the recording, I was playing a few of these for my 19-year-old son and asking him if he recognized them, and he probably recognized 5 of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Good job, Dave.
I
Well done.
wasn't like I was playing these for him a lot, but he's heard them around,
Well, it does help that maybe they sold the rights to, I don't know if it was all of theirs, but just what I needed is, isn't that a like Office Max commercial or something? I know it's on
I don't
some
remember
sort
that.
of commercial.
Is there?
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Nope. For me, it actually goes back to Shake It Up, I think, too, but that's probably roller skating. I remember hearing them a lot at the roller skating rink, and that's way after this album came out. Well, probably at least 3-4 years after this album came out. But I remember hearing Shake It Up and kind of relating that to roller skating and arcade.
Yeah.
Because they used to play music in the
prime.
arcades too. But boy, what another avenue to hear new music, because you're kind of captivated by, you're just kind of doing something almost mindless as roller skating. Or when a slow song came on, they'd be, if they maybe played Drive when that was out too. So you're just kind of sitting, unless you're out roller skating with a girl.
Just thinking of Drive, that was funny. I had no idea there was 2 lead singers.
Yeah.
So
same for the longest time.
Just, I'm seeing the videos on MTV, and I'm seeing Shake It Up, and I'm seeing Magic, and it's always Rick Ocasek.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. And then all of a sudden the Drive video comes on, and I'm like, oh, whoa, they're letting the bass singer sing a song. That's interesting.
I think it's about half the songs on this first album. You said,
I think they are.
and I that's the question I had. You guys have a preference, or are they just two different kind of singers?
I don't really have a preference.
Yeah.
Because to me, they're similar enough. Once I found out that there were two different singers singing a lot of these things, you can tell a difference.
Mm-hmm.
But Rick Ocasek wrote all the music and lyrics and stuff. So
I do have a preference. I like Rick's voice better.
Yeah.
Because it's a little more unique.
Oh, it totally is.
It wasn't unusual to have two lead singers back then.
But for doing half an album, I think that's
I was going to ask
unusual.
you guys, how many other bands around this time had two lead singers?
Well, I mean,
Styx.
Yeah.
3.
But those weren't split 50-50.
Like Fleetwood Mac.
Fleetwood Mac.
That's a lot of
But
them.
that's not 50-50 either, right?
Right.
The Eagles.
That's not 50-50 either.
Yeah, no, I know. But
Yeah.
nowadays you don't have two lead singers.
Chicago, Doobie Brothers, they all
did.
multiple singers,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but not two. I think two is pretty unique
Yeah.
to split evenly. And not only that, but for the record company or the producers to say, hey, it's not like after a few albums, one of them took over as the lead singer because, he had all the hits or whatever.
Yeah.
Because, they were both equally singing hits.
Mm-hmm.
So after this, and I realize we're talking about their debut album, but after this album, was it still more of a 50-50 split for the songs? Do you know?
Good question. Maybe listeners out there, please call us up.
Yeah, call in.
555-1243.
I don't know. But I guess I'm probably with Dave. I would take a Rick as a preference, but nothing against Ben.
No.
Yeah, and I wasn't looking for a fight on that one. I was just curious.
I was kind of looking for. I thought you guys were
I was rolling up my sleeves, buddy.
But
Let's go.
I like them both.
It's go time.
let's talk about the producer for a second.
Yeah.
Lance, what's his name?
Roy Thomas Baker.
And he's just coming off recording what huge album?
We just looked this up right before you got in the studio, and I don't remember what it was.
Was that Head Games or was that after this?
I think it was Queen's.
Queen. Because Dave and I were looking up. It's amazing the number of albums he had his finger on, including Foreigner, Queen. So Queen Jazz was the last one he did with Queen, you said?
But I think he was coming off of Night at the Opera.
That would have been a little earlier, I think. Night at the Opera was Bohemian Rhapsody, which came out in 75 or 76.
Okay.
And I think, maybe Jazz.
Because he was recording this in 77, I believe.
Okay.
So I think it's shortly
you're
after
probably right, Brian.
So those layered vocals, those harmonies, all that stuff. I mean, this Cars album is full of that.
Yep.
That kind of
Night
stuff.
at the Opera was 75.
Okay.
Jazz was 78.
About the same time. They were probably working on it at the same time. Because
So
this was a 78
you can
release.
see that influence. And, to give those huge vocals. And he had some recording machine that he had one of 4 in the world that was a 40-track recorder.
Oh, my goodness.
I saw the 40-track recorder. No, I didn't know that was only one of 4 in the world.
And so this was, his possession. So he brought this with him to record these bands.
It's really interesting because when I listen to this album, I know it's layered, but it doesn't have this really overt layered feel to it.
Yeah.
Some like a Journey album would, or Queen for sure.
Mm-hmm. When they came in with their demos, they had been playing live for quite a while. So they were a tight band. They knew what they were playing. The demos sound very similar to the finished product, except way more polished now, way, done big and better. Mm-hmm. But they don't stray very far from their original demos.
They were getting radio airplay in Boston on local stations.
Right.
Because the demos were so good, like you were saying.
Yeah.
and they had good stuff to work with. How many years were they playing ahead of their first release?
That I don't know, but I would say at least a couple, 2-3 years. But I know that Rick and Ben were in bands before this, different bands.
Yeah.
And even an acoustic duo for a while, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I saw the name of that, and I can't
how
remember
different,
it. Yeah.
of a sound. But I'm sure a lot of these songs kind of came from that.
They were like Simon and Garfunkel.
Right. Yeah.
Playing some folk.
Yes.
I'd love to hear that if it exists.
I'd love to hear some Okasik Ganor. That would be great.
Yeah, I had read that they were playing those two, kind of trying to find a good combination of other people to bring in and kind of swapping people in and out and things like that too. But they've been playing together for at least 2-3 years.
Right.
I can just hear it. I don't mind you coming here and wasting all my time.
You guys should hit the road, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get into talking about some tracks. I'm just going to go through them and then we'll circle back and talk about each individually a little bit. All right, side 1, Good Times Roll, My Best Friend's Girl, Just What I Needed, I'm in Touch with Your World, and Don't You Stop. And then we flip over to side 2, You're All I've Got Tonight, Bye Bye Love, Moving in Stereo, and All Mixed Up. Lots of hits in there.
Mm-hmm.
My overarching note was I think almost all these songs sound like they belong in the same album.
But
Great continuity.
Except?
But
I have 2 exceptions.
2 exceptions.
I just have one.
I have one, but
Let us start with a Good Times Roll and not Let the Good Times Roll,
that's right.
as I wanted to say earlier.
Because that means they're already rolling, right?
That's right. That's right.
I will say, like I always say, every album needs a good opener. Now, this is a good opener for the feel of the album. It's not a huge banging song coming out, guns blazing, but it's a good, steady groove, moody opener that sets you up for what's coming up for the rest of the album, which is a good time album.
That's well put. I was thinking the same thing. Like, this doesn't start off with a bang, but it does kind of set the tone for the rest of the album and what you're going to hear.
Yeah, because we were talking earlier, it's not a big rocker album.
Yeah.
It's a mellow rock or whatever. So fit perfect, I think.
I think I said relaxed rock.
Relaxed rock.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yacht rock.
Accessible rock?
Accessible
It's not-
rock.
Well, yeah.
No, it's not
No, it's
accessible.
not.
Nope.
That's
Nope.
Def Leppard.
That's right.
That was accessible metal.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, my bad. Accessible metal.
I think every cool song has a signature riff, and certainly this one starts off with that signature riff. And if you're somewhere in your garage listening to your boombox while you're cleaning the cobwebs like I do on Saturday afternoons, and you hear that riff, you're like, yep, Cars. You know, you immediately know.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it starts off, like Brian said, not with a bang, but familiar sort of feel for me.
I found a note from Rick Okasik on here. He said, that was my song about what the good times in rock and roll really mean instead of what they're supposed to be. It was kind of a parody of good times, really. It was kind of like not about good times at all, which I thought was very interesting. Because every time I've heard that, I'm like, yeah, let the good times roll.
Yeah. But maybe not.
I guess not.
Well, I mean, the line, let the stories be cold, let them say what they want. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So it was kind of,
It's moody.
yeah.
Mhm.
Is it as mellow as Pink Floyd for you? I mean, it's a different kind of music.
Which
but
album of Pink Floyd, man? I listened to some pretty crazy stuff for theirs too.
Yeah, I don't listen to that early stuff. I
I
do
don't-
once in a while.
I like
but
some of the early stuff. Obscured by Clouds and yeah.
yeah,
metal.
Nah, not me. Not the early stuff.
it's okay. But I don't know. I mean, you sit down and listen to Floyd and you're in a mellow mood. And this is not headbanging in any way. It's not, I'm getting into it. It's just,
It's good road
Good.
tripping music, isn't it?
Yeah.
yeah. And it's good recliner music too.
Yeah. Yeah.
With a set of headphones.
Yeah.
Yep. Either way, I guess you need to be sitting down.
Yeah, true.
It's good bike riding music.
That's right.
It's good skateboarding music.
Did either of you guys ever see the Cars in concert?
No.
Me neither.
I
Bummer.
heard that they're just motionless, and they recorded an album that came out in early 2010 or 12 called Move Like This, which was kind of a joke at themselves because they don't move on stage. And so,
I can totally see them doing that. Just looking at the guys, though. I mean, even with the videos, they weren't exactly jumping around during videos, right?
I remember recording. They had a live concert, probably mid 80s, that was on MTV, and watching it and going, this is pretty boring. Those guys do not move at all. They sound good, but they don't move.
It's like going to a Steely Dan show.
Probably.
That's maybe a good comparison too. There's nothing to move to with this music either, really.
Yeah.
But it's super enjoyable to listen to.
Yep.
Would you call it art rock? A little bit?
At times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple art rock songs on this album.
There are. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, My Best Friend's Girl.
I had one note that, to me, it also sounds like a song that came out later by John Fogerty, Rock and Roll Girls.
You know the guitar?
The guitar.
Yeah,
If you listen to that intro and you listen, you're like, oh, that's very similar.
Yeah, you change the arrangement on this and you could possibly have a country song here.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But it does sound like a 50s sounding kind of
rockabilly
guitar solos in that. So, yeah.
Yep.
And looking at some background on this one, too, I thought a funny quote from Rick Ocasek, who wrote this. He said, "Nothing in that song happened to me personally. I just figured having a girlfriend stone was probably something that happened to a lot of people."
Everyone can relate.
He figured, like some seasoned musicians, are writing stuff from real life, and he's just imagining that. I thought that was kind of funny. But another one, has a really unique riff to start it all off,
And you got some clapping in there. It's a bouncy song.
I listened to that on the way over here today, and one of the first things that went through my head when I heard the clapping is it sounds like it's right in your face.
Mm-hmm.
It's only sounds like three people.
Yeah.
But everything sounds really close to
really
you.
up front. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like that they weren't using, something to make it sound like a whole crowd of people or something like that. It's very personal.
Yeah.
It's personal rock.
And Dave and I, years ago, were in the band, little acoustic duo called Boxcar, and we covered this song.
We did.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And Brian would clap.
I would clap, and the crowd would clap along too.
Do we have a little recording we can slip into this show?
Ooh.
We never recorded this one.
Didn't you?
Really?
No. I looked
probably
it
a
up
live
on our
recording
covers.
somewhere.
It's probably a live one.
Yeah.
On the videotape.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure how it would sound.
And that maybe that works so well because maybe that's how it was originally written.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I think the lyrics are pretty crazy. I mean, a lot of these lyrics on this album are pretty crazy, but your suede blue eyes.
Yeah.
Who comes up with that?
Rick does.
Nuclear boots.
Yep. Drip dry gloves.
Yeah, it's really catchy. It makes you go
Head scratcher.
Yeah. Things that
I like
make
them
you
though.
go.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I like kind of crazy lyrics like that.
Yeah. And I think that was part of the appeal too,
Right.
because they were new wavy and they had this weird kind of art rock vibe and lyrics going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was intriguing for a lot of people to listen
I
to.
always wanted to have a pair of nuclear boots.
Yeah, let me know when you find them because I sure would like to know what they look like.
Yeah.
Incidentally, do you know who came up with the name The Cars?
No.
I
You
don't.
No?
No.
David Robinson
Oh, the
Drummer.
drummer. Yeah. Maybe I did read that.
came up with the name. He also influenced the fashion style for the band.
Which
I don't know
was
what-
very unique.
Yeah. And I don't know what they looked like maybe before. Maybe they're just all T-shirts and jeans or something, but
Yeah.
they had kind of a unique style to themselves.
The skinny ties.
they were-
That's what I'm thinking.
70s. They were kind of like the Commodores. They had these matching outfits, with just kidding.
Yeah.
David Robinson, the drummer, I believe also was influential in a lot of the album cover design, except for
This one.
this one is what I read. Yeah. This was more of the record company saying, we'd like to put something a little more interesting visually on the cover, because if you get the vinyl and take a look at the back side where the lyrics aren't, there's a collage of black and white photos. And what I believe was supposed to happen was that collage was the cover of the album. And it's cool.
But not album cover worthy.
No, definitely inside sleeve art.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where it ended up.
But now I'm just looking at that as you're holding it up. And back in the day, you'd throw the record on, you'd sit back in a chair, and you'd pull the record sleeve out.
Yep.
And as you're listening to the music, you're looking at the pictures, you're
Totally.
reading the lyrics, you're seeing who produced it, where it was, and all that stuff.
Reading the credits.
Yep.
So I'm really hoping people take us seriously when I say break out those liner notes.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause that's what we're talking about.
Right?
Yeah.
It's missing from today's, even CDs. I happened upon like the Kick CD again the other
Yeah.
day, and I opened that up. I'm like, it's got all the lyrics in there.
Yeah.
I mean, you get so much more out of the album when you have that rather than just listening on Spotify,
Mhm.
Right.
you know?
And listening to music back then, you sat down more to listen to music. And often it wasn't with headphones. It was in your room with the speakers.
Yeah, and you didn't have a choice but to listen to the whole album.
Right.
Because
I got to
you had-
get out of my chair.
Exactly.
Pick the needle up and try to skip
Yeah.
over to another track or midway or no,
Try to hit it right in the groove.
Yeah.
Forget it.
without scratching. All right, let's move on to Just What I Needed. Another guitar riff intro. Thought there was an interesting fact with this one as you're listening to it. Towards the 2:13 mark, more than halfway through, the beat flips from being on the second and fourth to the first and third count, and then it flips back again.
Look
Okay.
at you,
You
Mr.
probably-
Smarty Pants.
No, just listen to it one
Yeah.
time, and he does something in there. It was just a really cool kind of break, I
Yeah.
thought. So listen to it about the 2:13 mark,
Okay.
and it'll flip over, and then it flips back.
That is pretty cool.
You know, I mentioned it being in a commercial, so I quick looked. Where was that commercial? It's
Yeah.
a lot older than what I thought. It was Circuit City.
Oh,
2007.
Circuit City.
Wow.
Did everybody have a Circuit City, Dave?
No.
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 Okay. Yeah, we had Circuit City out in California.
Yeah, we had them in the Twin Cities too. That
Like
was
the
kind
front
of-
entryway looked like a big plug.
Yep. They were another Best Buy, but back then you had
It's car stereos and stuff I remember buying there.
Yep. There were a ton of stereo stores
Yeah.
back then. You'd have the big boxes, but you'd have smaller versions. You'd have independents, and
Yeah.
I think we had more independence where I grew up.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
probably more fun actually because they
Yeah. I mean, they
I think
maybe had
generally-
a few locations within the city, but I don't think they were like a national chain.
didn't have a Best Buy up in Anchorage. No,
Yeah. We had the Good Guys.
I've
Remember-
heard of it.
Remember when they had the listening rooms? You go into a room,
Yeah,
kind of like a studio, and you'd have a whole wall full of, say, car stereos, and you hit the button, and this one will play, and you pick your speakers,
Oh, yeah.
and you play it, pick an amp, whatever, and then you could go in the room and listen to it.
Yep.
And you could bring your own music in, whether it's a tape, probably a tape at the time.
Yeah.
Slip that in so you could hear what you wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just toggle back and forth between all the different options you would
Yeah.
have.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a few Best Buys still have something like that, but I'll put a plug in for an endorsement. No, we can't do that on this show, can we? But there's a store.
If they pay, they can.
Yeah, that's right.
If they're okay, anybody from Stereoland in Bloomington listening?
Ooh.
There's still a store that is very similar to one that I worked in growing up called Audio King. This store is called Stereoland in Bloomington, just off it doesn't matter where it is, but you can go in and listen to different speakers, try out the turntables, try out the headphones, and
Wow.
it's a fun experience if you're into stereo gear like I am.
Mm-hmm. Well, to get the best sound, you either needed a really good set of headphones, which most kids did not have,
Right.
or you got good speakers, and that's what people were doing.
Yep.
So all this walking around with earbuds in and all that stuff, and that was not around. And if you had any of those like Walkman headphones,
They weren't that awesome.
they did not.
They were
sound that
terrible.
great.
They were tinny. Yeah.
So
I had an uncle who had like some pretty big, muff earphones,
Yeah.
but it was the little coil cord with the quarter
Like a phone
inch
cord,
jack,
yeah.
that you were just plugging into a larger stereo to listen to it.
yeah,
so it wasn't blasting on the speakers.
Right.
But that wasn't something you just kind of walked around the house with.
Right. Yeah.
So you were, by and large, listening on speakers like you mentioned before.
Yep.
The synths play a pretty prominent role in this song, I think.
Yeah.
Some of the bridges, and I'm thinking even a solo, like a synth solo.
I was just playing that in my head. I think you're right.
Yeah. There's definitely guitar solos, and this is a guitar band for sure. Who was the lead guitarist? Elliot Easton, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But there are spots where you would expect a guitar solo and you get a synth solo. And not in a bad way. It sounds cool.
Yeah. And they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Do you remember who inducted them?
Oh, I hope you can tell us.
I'm asking. But it was a guitarist who maybe you wouldn't even think, or a person who you wouldn't even think would be like really influenced by the Cars.
Really?
And, but I remember him praising the guitar work, and that was a huge influence for him.
Boy, I'm very curious to know who that is.
It was doing the honors of inducting the Cars was the Killers frontman, Brandon Flowers.
Oh, awesome. Totally awesome. Killers are, if we ever get into newer rock, I'll talk about the Killers. I really enjoy the Killers and have seen them. And I could see how the Cars were an influence for the Killers. And they use synth as well. The Killers do.
I'm not as familiar with them.
I'm not really either.
Yeah. We'll believe you, though.
Yeah. Get caught up to me, guys. Come on.
Sorry, man.
Let's talk about some
I
music.
just don't hear, people talking about, so much the guitar work or the guitars of the Cars,
No.
It's really good stuff.
It is.
But it's not a name that people are going to throw around.
Probably because they just stood there and played, right?
Right.
Weren't
If that
doing
guy
any
would jump,
flying.
maybe,
Yeah,
we
no,
do something.
no flying eddies or
Right.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
They were just, in some ways, outside of Rick Ocasek, they were kind of a faceless band.
Right.
Now that we're thinking, I'm playing the song in my head. There's a really good guitar solo in here, actually.
Is there?
Yeah.
Is it the
Yeah.
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 That was dead on, man.
Yeah, I'm not hearing it.
These first three songs have kind of this familiar pattern to them where they're starting off with this kind of guitar lick. You get into the song, maybe have a little synth. I mean, they sound very cohesive and they belong on the album together. Now, let's jump to the next song, I'm in Touch with Your World, which breaks this pattern in a huge way. And what is this song?
It's the ballad, Dave. You got to have a ballad.
That's a
So,
ballad.
just straight up experimental? Because even the lyrics and the way they sing this is so different.
It is.
Creepy cool.
It's creepy.
I think it's kind of a fun song. It was like, let's see how many sound effects or cool sounds that we can fit into a song. But to me, it's just a momentum killer. You just came out with these three songs.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you hit this one. It's just like, whoa. But it just drags the thing down.
Yeah. And it just interrupts the good feeling of those first three songs. You're just kind of grooving and you're like, dun, dun, dun,
yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. I'm like, what?
But it's so catchy. Take it for what it's worth.
Well,
I agree. It's nothing like the first three.
And it kind of grew on me a little bit. But
like I said, I like it.
Yeah.
It just does not fit.
No, I played this for my same 19-year-old too. And I said, what do you think of this one? And he's like, well, this is weird. And I said, it looks like they were just kind of looking around the studio to see what kind of instruments were available.
Right.
There's like some scratching things and like a slide whistle in here.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is just like
kind of like freeze frame. There were a few that I scratched my head about. And like
a
they
great
weren't bad.
non-album track.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I wonder if they ever did it live.
I doubt. Well, who knows?
They actually talked about, doing this live.
Really?
I mean, some of the
they
lyrics.
like doing this one live.
Did they?
Yeah.
It's probably fun to play. But I mean, some of the lyrics, you get the Weisenheimer brainstorm.
Yeah.
What? It's so unique. It's cool.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like you were saying with some of the lyrics before and in the earlier songs too.
yeah.
I mean, they're a little out there. I mean, it's kind of almost experimental music with the experimental lyrics.
I'm a psilocybin pony. You're a flick fandango phony.
What'd you call me?
Whoa.
What
easy
is
there,
it?
Lance.
Those are
Lance.
fighting words.
Yeah.
Man.
What is it? It's so, that's why
Go time again.
that's why I like it.
If this
I don't disagree.
if this didn't come out on a record with 2 sides, this would have been way, way at the end of the second side of the record.
And there is, when we get to the way end of the second side, we'll talk about how I feel about that song.
All right.
So I was looking to see if there was maybe some other influence on the kind of weird psychedelic thing. So this is in between Pink Floyd's Animals and The Wall. So they had a bunch of, psychological weird stuff going on before that. But I don't know. This just seems like kind of like I don't know. Like you said, for me, it does not fit on this album. This is like a B-side at best.
Wow.
It's kind of grown on me a little bit, but it because it's probably just so weird.
I don't disagree. It's a weird track, but I'm telling you, I dig it.
I mean, there were a lot of critics who really liked this song. There was one who said this was like the best song on the album.
Wow.
And I'm like, I don't know what else you're listening to.
Yeah.
But, so opinions vary
Yeah.
on this one, for sure. All right. The next one after that, the last song on the first side, Don't Ya Stop.
I think this is probably the most up-tempo song on the album.
For sure.
Agree.
I'd love to hear it live because I think there'd be a little more punch to it. It's a little shallow maybe in the recording. But it's thin. Yeah.
Thin.
Yeah. Yeah, shallow. That probably has a different connotation.
Well, I wonder, a lot of that phaser stuff in the beginning, it kind of pulls everything back a little bit. So maybe that makes it a little shallow sounding.
I think this would sound really cool live and huge.
Yep.
And I could see the fans throwing their fists up in the air. Don't you stop. Don't you stop.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. This one seemed a little out of place, but not as much as the I'm in touch with your world.
Yeah, it fits the vibe of the album. I think
so.
Yeah,
It's a good ender to side A or side 1.
Yep, I would agree. I don't know. I don't think it's ever been on the radio.
No,
as far as I
remember
know.
hearing that.
But I've listened to the album enough to.
Very familiar with it.
Yeah, the lyrics again are maybe not so much in this, but the lyrics throughout this album are so weird that you have to. And that's the advantage of having the
liner notes.
The liner notes from back in the day with the vinyl. You could actually learn the lyrics. We talked about that once in one of the episodes where, that's what they're saying.
Yeah, right.
Misheard lyrics.
Yeah.
But again, good tune, and
I think the chorus for me doesn't ring as true. I think for the rock and style, it sounds a little softer, a little pulled back, as opposed to like the rest of the song is like kind of like really punchy. And they kind of bring it back a little bit with the chorus for me. Don't just stop. Don't just stop.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have been a little harder.
Yeah.
But that's just the flavor I like. So is this one where you hear a little more kind of Queen-esque sound? I'm just thinking of the chorus even.
Yeah, it depends on what Queen album you're talking about.
Yeah, Dave. Not every album sounds the same, man.
I don't know my Queen albums as much. No, I have Innuendo. That's what.
That's a good album.
Yeah.
Some of their, let's see, Hot Space came out about this time. Yeah, kind of actually, but I don't know if Baker was involved with that.
That was a few years later, but yeah.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it would have fit a little better to throw "Don't You Stop" at number 4 and throw your guys' favorite track at the end.
Out.
But
out. Yeah, out.
No thanks.
I would have dropped it from the album.
I would have too.
We'll agree to disagree on that one.
Yeah, we can. That's the beauty of this medium.
Yes.
We don't have to agree on every song.
Subjective as it comes.
Yep. All right, let's move on to side 2 with You're All I've Got Tonight.
I'm going to say this is the heaviest track on the album. I think the guitars are heavy. Lot more little guitar licks thrown in here and there throughout the song. So I'm giving it the heaviest jamming song on the album.
Yep, I would agree. It's the heaviest. It's not the most upbeat.
Nope.
But it's certainly heavy. I mean, if you're our age and into air guitar, it's a total air guitar tune.
Lots of phaser effects.
That adds
on
to
the
that.
album. There's lots of phaser.
Yeah, there
on
is
the album.
actually. But this one, starting with that, I think adds to that thickness of the guitar and makes it sound heavier.
Yeah.
At the beginning for sure. And then they just kind of build it into it. And then with the big vocals, it just launches into it. It does sound like a good heavy song.
Yeah, the drum intro is, again, instantly recognizable. There's no other song that sounds like that at the beginning.
Yep.
So you know where you're going. Probably my favorite album or favorite track on the album. Probably my favorite track on the album.
Nice.
As I was writing some notes, I said, I think this is my favorite. But there's no clear-cut favorite on this album. It's kind of like listening to Van Halen's debut album, trying to pick a favorite. It's not really possible.
Yeah.
There's more favorite songs and less favorite songs.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
And I kind of put like those first 3 in line with this one, where I could listen to any of those, and they're all kind of about the same for me. I do like this one a little bit more, maybe because it is a little heavier like that.
It's kind of like
likes his rock and roll.
Yes,
I like it heavy.
It's kind of like your kids, right? Your more favorite and then your less favorite kids.
It depends on the day of the week.
It does, totally.
Who's at home? Who's eating all the food? Who's not eating all the food?
Who's picking up in the kitchen? Who's not picking up?
That's right. Who's doing their chores and who's not? Yeah.
Yep.
So I was noticing on side 2 with these last 4 songs, they do kind of bleed into the next songs.
All 4 of them do?
Not completely, but if there is a pause, it's a very quick pause.
Agreed. Yeah.
And then boom, and you're into the next song.
Yep. And that's cool. I think
it is cool.
Yeah.
And I know, different albums have done that you listen to, and it really, you know what's coming next. It almost makes it like one long song because it's like this song boom and the next one boom is right there. I always kind of liked that.
Yeah. I
because
do like
it's like you can't separate the songs in a way.
It made it really easy for the DJs on 2 for Tuesdays to.
That's right. Yeah, we'll just let this go, and I can go to the bathroom and go get some nachos.
I'm back a half hour lunch.
Don't have to move the needle.
I think there's a spot in this song where the lyrics or the vocals get kind of almost an angry feel. I think it's where he says, "I don't feel sorry for you," or something like that, and it gets as rockin' as the Cars can get.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm dissing the Cars way, because they are a rock and roll band, but they're reserved in their approach. But this song
lets loose a little more.
Yep. It rips. Yep.
All right, let's move on to Bye Bye Love.
That's why I don't get a real layered feel. I mentioned that before, that this album seems to me like it was maybe laid down in a single take sort of thing. Do you guys feel like I know there's layers to this, but does it feel layered at all to you?
They're real subtle, I think, for me, because like I said, it sounds like it's just almost kind of bare bones.
It does.
For a lot of the instruments. And on this one, you can hear a lot of different synth stuff going over the top of each other with different sounds. But it doesn't sound like, there's 30 tracks on here. I mean, it doesn't, you don't get that impression.
Yeah.
So there's some masterful engineering or producing / engineering going on here to make it feel like it's not 40 tracks worth of junk that we're just throwing in there.
I agree. And some of those albums that are layered in that way become really tiresome on the ears to listen to.
Yeah.
This tune is about as poppy as they come on this album. Really, I mean, if you listen to the beginning, It sounds like a pop song to me.
Yeah, I would agree.
As much as the Cars can.
And this is Ben Orr singing this one. I thought he almost sounded a little bit angry at times.
Yeah, there's a little
he
snarl.
kind of got a
in the
little,
voice.
yeah.
Yep, little snarl in the voice at times.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, he is actually kind of, there is a point in there where he's like almost kind of yelling.
Mm-hmm.
I just said that earlier. Nobody's scream singing, but he's
Yeah.
almost kind of yell singing.
Right.
He's on the verge of it, like really intense, right?
I think it's that substitution, mass confusion clouds inside my
Yes.
head. He gets
The something not expecting to survive, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, so
We have the lyrics right there. Lance.
little angry.
yeah. Yep.
Looking it up on the liner notes.
Cool keyboard solo in there. I like that.
Is that in lieu of a guitar solo on this particular one?
Or I think there might be both.
Yeah.
All right, getting into track 8 here, Moving in Stereo.
I am going to list this one as my favorite song on the album.
I'm a little shocked
Are
at
you?
that. Yeah. I love this song too.
And I think the reason is because this was probably one of the lesser played popular songs. And I always kind of craved hearing this song. I was like, I want to hear that Moving in Stereo song. And I didn't hear it that often. And I just thought it was cool. It was moody. It was a musical journey of stereo effects. I mean, if you're going to throw your headphones on, I mean, it's
literally in the title.
totally. Yes.
And it lives up to its
Great.
name.
Yep. And his vocal in the beginning, the way that would just zip to the other ear.
Yep.
I just loved that.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. The vocal kind of sounds like he's singing in a box a little bit. It has that tight quarters kind of sound. AM transistor radio playing. I mean, that kind of.
Oh, yeah, with
sound.
the effect on it.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, really compressed sound. This is one of the biggest sounding songs, I think, on the album, too.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot going on with this one.
There's
Yep.
some big swells and some
Yes.
low point. I agree. Yeah.
But there's just a lot of instrumentation going on, though, too, just to give it a maybe full is the better word, like one of the fullest sounding songs on there compared to the
And
rest
yet
of them.
it could be very minimal.
Yes.
That's
Right.
why. That's why I
Right.
called it a musical journey for the song.
Yeah.
Because you're moving along to a lot of different places.
The first time I remember hearing this, I was actually out in California with you over spring break, Brian.
Oh,
Yeah, I think it was. And you ended up putting this on a mixtape,
yeah.
which I have right here called Mass Variety.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh, you got it right
I have
there.
it right here.
Do you have anything to play that on even?
I do,
Nice.
but it plays fast, so everything sounds really high. But Brian sent a little note on this too, to myself and my two roommates, Channing and Nate. We were all living together in an apartment in Minnesota, and Brian was still back in California. Sent this out with a little note at the beginning of it. So a funny story about that. So I'm in drawing class at MSU, and there's a bunch of us who have Walkmans and things like that. And my instructor comes over and he said, "Hey, what are you listening to? You know, we could put that on the big stereo." And they just had like a boom box in the room. I'm like, yeah, sure. And it was towards the end of like side 2. So I flipped it over. We listened to that, maybe a few songs off that, and I still flipped it over to side 1. And that's where you had the message. And I went back to my seat, and then I hear, "Hey, Dave, Brian, Nate," or "Hey, Dave, Chan, and Nate." And so Brian's talking, and I'm running over to shut the
Shut
thing
it
off.
up.
Yeah, fast forward to the song. But one of the first song on side A is Moving in Stereo. So that's where I really recognized the song from. Honestly, I'm going to be brutally honest. I knew it was the Cars, but I didn't put that together because it sounds so different from the other songs that were popular at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I didn't make that connection. And plus Benjamin Orr singing this one, not Rick Ocasek. And I was relating like Rick sings car songs, not Benjamin.
Right.
So
Yes.
it was hard for me to relate the two in a strong way.
Yeah.
But my instructor came over and was like, "Oh, I have this album. It's a really great album." And I'm like, "Yep."
Who is it?
I had no idea. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, man.
And I remember recording this too because
The mixtape?
well, not maybe this song because Bye Bye Love is fading out while this song is fading in.
yeah. And
So
yep.
so I remember like having to, do that. It's like, when do I start the
adjust.
song and when do I cue it in and all that. So
Yep.
you might catch a little bit of the end of Bye Bye Love on that recording.
This song is actually featured in a movie.
What? What are you talking about, Dave?
Don't remember that at all. Nope, was not memorable.
For those of you who don't know.
Somebody had to bring it up.
Yep. But I'm going to relate that to a modern take on that same thing where it was featured in a TV show.
I know what you're talking about.
You do? Okay. So it was featured in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. There's a swimming pool scene that you can go reference if you want, but 1982.
Great soundtrack, by the way.
But only
Yes.
if you're 17 years
That's right.
of age
PB
and
18.
over.
18.
There's probably a
18?
PG version on
Wasn't it?
YouTube.
I thought R was 17.
No, you're right.
So I got that scene kind of got referenced as an homage to the new generation during a Stranger Things 3 episode when Billy starts his shift at the pool with a bunch of cougar moms kind of getting ready, and they start playing this song, and he starts walking out as the sex symbol instead of Phoebe Cates back in '82 in Fast Times. So I thought that was kind of a cool,
that was
little
funny.
homage.
I did see that.
Billy, the guy with the mullet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Super mullet.
Yeah.
Dirty mustache.
Totally remember it now. Yeah.
All mixed up. What do you think about this song?
I like it. It's very different. It's another one that is. I think this fits on the album, but it is very different. I think it's a good ending song. There's a sax solo at the end, and I don't think there's any other brass instruments that I can think of in there. So very different, but I like it. And it sounds to me like it could have been in a movie scene, driving or something like that.
There's a little of that vibe in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking right now, the Miami Vice, Phil Collins in the Air Tonight, kind of that kind of thing, driving, thinking, flashback memories, and this playing.
No, I can see that. If you painted a good picture about that, because I think now that you say that, I hear it more it could be in a soundtrack or a movie or a TV show.
And mellow song.
Yeah, it is an interesting one to end on, I thought. I mean, it's not super rocking, and it is different enough.
And a lot of times that is typical, where the end of it'll be that song that you don't know quite where to fit it in.
Yeah.
And, but a cool song.
This is my least favorite song on the album. Yeah. It feels a little uninspired to me. There's no big hook anywhere.
Right.
Not that that's super important with the Cars, because they have a lot of stuff after this that isn't hooky in any way. But to me, there's hooks on the rest of this album, and this song just kind of left me flat. I sat down and listened to the entire album in the dark, except for the lava lamps.
Nice.
And wait, you have more than one?
I have two identical lava lamps positioned right in.
Do you have the incense going too?
I have no incense, but
just the weed.
Common sense?
No.
It's the common sense.
Now you guys have made me lose my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
You're saying how this is your least favorite song.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just feels uninspired to me. And I just feel kind of flat listening to it.
Is it one you'd skip?
I probably, you talked about I'm in Touch with Your World, leaving that off. This one I would have left off. It's not a terrible song, but it again, doesn't have a hook and doesn't make me want to. So
maybe being the last song of the album is a good place for it.
For sure, if that's all they had.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to agree with you, Lance, because this is not my favorite song on the album. It's not my least favorite, because that's I'm in Touch with Your World.
Yeah.
But I think you can help vocalize kind of what I was feeling about it, where it does kind of leave you flat. I think if they would have ended the album with Moving in Stereo, that would have been a much stronger ending for me. Like, that's just, man, that was a great album after listening to that. Instead, you're kind of left with this little, it feels like an add-on, and that does need to be there.
That's how I feel about it too. Now, if we flip this with Moving in Stereo,
maybe.
Or
put it in place of I'm in Touch with Your World or around the Don't You Stop ending of the first half, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
The first side.
Yeah, maybe the best way, as I said before, it just leaves me kind of, okay.
Ho-hum.
There. Yeah.
What a great way to end our conversation, I think. Yeah. So ho-hum.
But this is a great album, guys.
It is.
Another Boston-based band that we've reviewed. Number 3.
Brian got that in there. I'm like, they're not all from Boston. Boston-based.
Number 3, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. You know, I have another album I'd like to do from another band that's from Boston, UMass. At some point in the future, maybe we'll get to them. And if we do, I'll point it out.
All right.
All right. Okay, guys, it's time to give our personal rating of this album from 0 to 10. Where do you guys stand on the Cars' debut album? Lance?
Classic. It's a 9 for me.
Pretty high. Pretty high.
It's not a every week listen, but it's certainly in my rotation. And listened to it a ton growing up. Listened to it through college. And I still listen to it today because there's some super classic tracks on this album. It's good stuff.
It's a good summer album, I think. And I'm going to give it a 8.
Straight up 8?
Straight up 8. No decimals this week.
I'm just going to go right down and say it's a 7 for me. I think it would have been a little higher had I liked a few more of those songs. Mm-hmm. I just wasn't as familiar. I knew a lot of the songs on the album. Again, like kind of like the last album we reviewed. I was surprised at how many I knew, and that, you know, pretty popular. But the ones I didn't were just so different for me. That's, I think, what dropped it down. I mean, it's a solid album, though. I mean, obviously, this is a pretty huge album for them, especially for a debut album. So
right.
Easy to listen to. All right, guys, it's time for Remember When. This is a segment where I ask Brian and Lance their thoughts about something we grew up with but may no longer be around today. Today's item, which is very thematic with our album choice for today, road maps. You know, like the paper kind. You have to be an engineer to refold once it's open.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you use them a lot? You remember them?
Oh, yeah. I had a number of them in the glove compartment in the car.
Yes.
Each vehicle, you'd have multiple maps in there.
The state you were in and maybe adjoining states?
Yep, exactly.
You guys are just going to, again, laugh, but
Because you're so old.
I am old.
Don't tell me you still have one in your car.
No.
Okay, good.
I just got my dad up to speed on using Google Maps, Apple Maps.
Nice.
But
wow.
I think 10 miles down the road, turned it off. Said, I'm going on this 2-lane road. I don't want to drive on the freeways. I'm 83 years old.
Yeah.
You want to give him a shout out? You listen to the podcast?
He asked about it.
Oh, yes.
No, road maps, I'm telling you, this is going to sound funny, but my first college major, before I figured out what I wanted to do with my life, was geography.
Oh.
And I had a cartography class where you actually had to make maps.
Oh, cool.
It was fun. Yeah.
That would be cool.
And you had to do it with pen and ink. I mean, Dave, you'd really appreciate it because it was an art form.
Yeah.
And road maps, I don't think I was inspired by that class per se because I always loved looking at maps as a kid. I'd get out maps and figure out what's the best way to get to wherever we were going on vacation with my folks, and what kind of features are going to be along the way. Where can we stop? Maps to me opened up this kind of world that you imagined it would be, and then when you go on the road, it's a lot of times nothing like what you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
So not only were they useful in helping you get to where you wanted to go, but to me it was almost like reading a book because I imagined what the world would be like by looking at maps, and atlases as well. And I carried an atlas in the car rather than have a stack.
Sure. Yep.
You'd have, the 50 state atlas. I had another atlas that was a Minnesota. I think they used to sell these at Sam's Club. It was a Minnesota atlas that had the topographic features so you can see where the hills are and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
What hills?
In Minnesota? Yeah, around here.
You said hills, not mountains.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Down by Rochester, there's a few hills.
Yes. Down by the valley, river valley there.
Yeah. But yeah,
Planning trips. You know, we're going to go here, and you pull out your map and you're like, okay, we got to do this. And often you're making notes. Okay, we're going to take this highway and blah, blah, blah. But that's, yeah. And then you hoped that whatever maybe city you're going to, you could flip the map over and they'd have a blow up of that city.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
otherwise, all these little streets and stuff, you had no idea what they were called.
Yep.
You hope to get to an area, and then you'd maybe stop at the gas station and ask for directions to
the big cities got
place.
the blow up. Even the medium ones are like, maybe it might have something on there.
I wonder if there's a population threshold for the big city blow up on the backside of the map.
There must have been.
Depends on what state you're in, I'm guessing, right?
No, right. Yeah, because some states might not have many.
Well, I mean, the alternative was you just buy a city map for that city.
True.
Too.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted everything around there, because it would obviously more detailed than the little blow up on the big map.
My friend Danny was a member of AAA, and they would get free maps.
Oh, that's right.
So he would. I'd say, hey, I'm going to do a trip here. Oh, I'll get you some maps. So he was my supplier.
And those are like the little flip ticket kind of ones.
You could do that too. Yeah. You tell them the trip you're going to make, and you get those flip ones.
Triptych is what it was called.
Yeah.
Yes. So we had those on our choir tour from college, and we were coming back from California.
Yeah.
And
passed you on the bus.
We'd get to a certain point, and our director would stand up and flip. And everybody's like,
Another page
down.
Closer.
That close, not much closer to home.
Another 100 miles.
Yes.
Right.
But I do remember, I loved maps. I loved studying them. I loved everything about them because they were very much a visual medium.
Yep.
I remember buying a bigger set, though, when I had to travel from Minnesota to Washington for a wedding, for Brian's wedding, going through states that I had never been to before. So you're buying more maps.
Right.
And then, having somebody navigate, because it wasn't like you just pulled this up on your phone.
Right.
Or your GPS, maybe even at the time.
Right.
A side note about that, too. My wife and I were in Alaska visiting my parents, and we were in a place called Hatcher Pass. And we were way up in the mountains, like 2,000 feet elevation. And
that's not way up in the mountains.
Well, it was up in the pass. That was about the height of this particular part of the pass, I think. Okay. But there's no cell service there. I thought I was going to be able to pull up my phone just to see kind of where we were on my map. Well, there's no cell service. So my dad had a GPS system, obviously connects to satellites, but I'm just thinking even if you didn't have a GPS, you still need to kind of know where you are in relation to the map.
Mm-hmm. I know I have become very lazy.
Yeah.
You just depend so much on your GPS, you don't even pay attention anymore.
Yeah.
I used to know so much more, and now you're just like, well, just take me here, and you're not paying attention.
It's almost kind of a brainless exercise,
it is.
right? Yeah.
It's kind of nice, though.
I know. It's definitely nice.
Don't have to feel bad about being lazy. It makes getting there a little less stressful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But as Dave said, I enjoyed looking at maps and studying maps and making maps. And that's a really good remember when segment, Dave.
I loved the U.S. map and seeing the Rockies. I just loved.
Yeah,
I loved that section. It's like, wow. Can we drive through that?
Yep.
Where do we drive through that? How do we get to the other side?
Yep.
Probably the limited routes through the passes.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Good stuff, Dave.
All right, that'll do it for today. In our next episode, we're mixing it up a bit and talking about our first impressions of music, the stuff our parents listened to and we grew up with, which should be a really interesting conversation, I think. If you missed our previous episode, we talked about the Def Leppard album Pyromania. It was a hot conversation, so if you haven't listened to that yet, go back and check it out. You guys love it.
I do it.
Come on.
We're good.
If you've enjoyed this episode or maybe even just tolerated it, please do us a favor and share the episode link with a friend to help us spread the word about when records ruled. Also, let us know what album or topic you'd like to hear us talk about in a future episode.
All right, and now that you've listened to this episode, it would be great if you could give us a 5-star review of the show.
Yeah.
If you really think it was that great, and if not, give us a 4.5.
Or 5.
Or 5 again. And any other shows that you like, give us some ratings on those. We'd really appreciate that. Give us the good, the bad, and the ugly. Lance can take it. Dave can take it. I could probably take it.
You could probably take it.
Okay.
We're getting better at taking it.
Yeah. You can also follow us and leave us comments on Instagram and Facebook at When Wreckers Ruled, where you can see pictures of us and other things that we have on the show, the bands that we review, and our Remember When segments. Check out our Spotify playlist, where you can find all the albums that we've discussed on this podcast. And remember, we're not professional music critics. We're just 3 guys who like talking music.
That's right. Thanks for listening, everyone. Rock on.